Welcome back, one and all, to Magus in the Media. And do we have such a lovely show for you tonight? Tonight, as the title states, Devils in Plain Sight, the mechanics of influence. And in this evening, we're going to try to elucidate and awaken us all, one and all, to certain things that seem to be happening in the world, something that we all can feel, something that seems to be moving from the base of our spine all the way up to the top of our head. And sometimes it can feel like there's control from outside of us. And tonight we're going to try to show through the things that we have seen how it's not like it needs to be that way. We don't need to be controlled by anyone. So we have to understand, what are these devils on our shoulders? What are these things when language come outside of us and it seemed like others are parroting hot topics? And then you really want to get into, what do you think of? I can tell you're hearing that from somebody else. Can we figure out what the truth of things are? And it's going to be a fun one. This evening, I have a very special guest for everyone. It is the great Kaiva Rose. Hello, Kaiva. How are you this evening?
I'm doing lovely. Thank you.
Wonderful. Can you tell the crowd a little bit about who you are and what you do and all of that stuff?
Yes. So I practice traditional astrology. This is like Hellenistic astrology, medieval astrology, all of the ancient techniques, the timing techniques, horary astrology. I practice all of those on a daily basis with clients. And I also do daily and weekly astrology videos that you can find on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And I also am a tarot reader and a Reiki practitioner. And I am so happy to be here with you. And I also have a young adult novel series called Rue Odyssey. And you can find that at rueodyssey.com as well. Thank you.
Beautiful. Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you. And yes, your books are amazing. And I think everyone should go out there and get them and read them, because there's things going on, and these stories that are coming out of these brilliant artists' minds seem to be helping us along on this journey. Because if we don't understand that there are certain things happening and there are certain narratives being spun, and then how to get ourselves out of those, I think the best things to do is go to our stories. See, exactly like this one, Rue Odyssey, Look Beyond. And so I think that's actually a great way to start. Can you, with the topic that you helped me pick out, that we picked out together, can you give me a brief rundown of how that actually relates to your story, this young adult magical fiction?
Yeah, well, I think for me, it started along like in high school. I was so sensitive, and I felt like I was always able to see through certain authoritative mechanisms, like, whether it be the government or whatever it is. And I just felt like there was people that could feel it and see it. And then there's people that can't see it, right? There's people that can feel like that person looks and speaks very nicely, but their energetics are not right. There's something off about the tone. There's something off about their eyes. There's something off about them in general. And so that's actually how Rue Odyssey kind of came about, because it was my way of dealing with this idea that, like, why can't everybody see it? Why can't everybody see that, like, these people behind the scenes that are just like, oh, we're in war. We have to get to war. And they're just pulling and sucking energy. So the whole idea of this book actually is that there's this cuckoo clock tower, and it's at the center of the village. And the dignitaries are the ones that come in and out of the village. They like wander, but they're the ones that control this little village. And they harness the fear energy, and they use it for their own devices and everything that they want to do, whether it be wars or destroying civilizations. Like, they choose to put fear into the people of Gangleton. Gangleton's the oppressed little village that she grows up in. They choose to give them fear, and then they harness that energy. And actually, this culture, this town called Gangleton, actually used to be one of the first civilizations that left the ancient land of Rue. And the ancient land of Rue is like a mystical land. It's like where everybody goes when shit hits the fan and the world has to be destroyed. They go to Rue, and then the guardians of Rue put the dragons around, and they protect the land. And so, anyways, when the world becomes able to be fertile again, the villagers, they leave and they create different villages around the world. And so Gangleton is one of them. So it's actually it used to be a very pristine place until the Gangleton, the dignitaries created a false attack. And so the false attack gave them reason why people had to have ravens connected to their hair, and why they had to have order in this little village, because if they didn't have order and if they weren't controlled by these ravens that were picking them up and moving them around, they would have, potential chaos. So there could be another attack, or they wouldn't know who would be an intruder. So the whole idea is that all of this, for some of us, I think, is just so obvious. Like, it's so obvious, right? It's so obvious because it doesn't make sense, right? There's a lot of it that doesn't make sense. And a lot of it, I think, comes from my Buddhist practice, where I look at these things and I think, like, it shouldn't have to be this way, right? So a little bit of a gist.
No, I really like that, because you're hitting on a few things. So let's set the tone, because a lot of these things seem to be allegory for what we're seeing in our current life. And interesting enough, like, allegory changes into like fiction, turning into realities pretty seamlessly, because the things that are allegory are the ideas that we're seeing them unfold. And so that idea of creating a false attack in the land in where they're at, and then needing to create this connection, this linkage that can pull everyone back to this watchtower. Is that correct with the ravens?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then the main character, she and her friends actually have created these hats that they put on. So they each have, like, one of them has like a top hat, one of a derby hat. So they got these hats that they just magically put a spell around, and so they wear the hats so their ravens actually don't take flight. And then there's this one young one who's like the biggest rebel, because his grandfather gave him the most wisdom, where he's actually trained his ravens to not respond to the clock tower. So just like different essences of what control is and how people respond.
Oh, nice. And no, I think that's amazing. So what do you think we see in our day and age, that kind of response? Like what's the allegory for how we're seeing things?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like in our day, I think it's obvious, right? Because I guess I always go back to, like, first and foremost, like, I approach things from a Buddhist lens. Like, my lens is that um I'm a sovereign being. I'm here to clear my karma. I'm here to make good causes in my life so I can have better karma. And I'm here to understand what my relationship is to everything, because how I have a relationship with you or everything kind of tells me what my karma is, and my ability to hold it together or let that thing, that relation, destroy my consistency from beginning to end of my practice. So I look at this world and I think, like, I should be able to have a genuine connection and experience with what I'm experiencing. And that's what it is for everybody. And that's where, at the end of the day, people make their own choices, right? But at the end of the day, like, I think it's important to have these conversations, because I think most people aren't super sensitive to the tones. They're not super sensitive to the way that people do things, because they don't want to see it. I think there is an ignorance, a choice to not see what's actually happening. So I think how it relates to our day and age, I mean, we've seen so many different things happen just in the past, like, 5 years, that have really been like, wow. And I think, like, the thing is that when people need to turn to a media station or an influencer to decide how they're going to feel about said circumstance, like, I think that is so bizarre, because I feel like, as a very sovereign person, I'm like, well, I'm gonna sit with that and feel that, and then that's how you kind of know who's on your side, right? Because we've made it through so many psyops together, right? There's only, like, and I'm not saying, like, maybe all my choices are right, but I base them on, like, my moral code of
Yeah.
wanting to have the best karmic outcomes for my life. So therefore, like, I don't agree with killing, I don't agree with war, I don't agree with hating on religions, like, I don't agree with anything that involves a bad karmic choice. And so, but that's my measure, right? And everybody has their own measure of why they make the decisions they make. But I think sometimes we hear, like, right now, like, in the work I do, people are always like, I'm having my spiritual awakening, and sometimes I wonder, like, what does that mean for you? Like, what does that mean for you to be having a
Yeah.
spiritual awakening? Like, did some person who's doing, like, the fifth dimension work, are they the ones that told you that you are having your spiritual awakening? Like, who? Because I feel like when I went through my first introduction to everything, like, I didn't really call it a spiritual awakening. I just, like, did things. So I don't actually know oftentimes what that actually means.
Right. That's a great idea. This whole idea of calling out your spiritual awakening, As in, like, it's like almost like in anime where they start calling out their moves, and then you question them all, like, why are you telling me what you're going through? I'm gonna be like, it kind of shows me who you are, where you're at, and the idea of like you calling for your own awakening is quite fascinating. Yeah, and
or that it never wasn't happening, or that it wasn't ever happening. You know, isn't it always happening?
Right,
like,
right.
Always,
That's great. Yeah. No, it's true. And the idea, because a big one is that the initiation never ends. And I think it's really fascinating how no matter if you're in like a religion where you're being baptized or initiated into the house of Christ or the Lord, or you're in a spiritual tradition or in one of these institutionalized lodges or even science, it's like, I was initiated. Like it's like something ended. Isn't that fascinating? Like I went through my initiation and it's this degree, you know what I mean? It's like, okay, great. Yeah. Why do we all care? Let alone like, let's have a conversation and then I'll be able to actually tell if you've actually gone through these things instead of just naming something that then you were told to you by another group of individuals who, how can we trust that they know what they're talking about, right?
Yeah, because I mean, I think at the end of the day, because me personally, I feel that like everybody, even if you didn't belong to like some sort of lodge or some sort of thing where they teach you all the different things, I think we all genuinely have our own introductions to each things in our life that prepare us for the next thing, that prepare us for the next thing. Like, so yeah, you don't necessarily need the regurgitated version of somebody's like spiritual experience to understand what you're going through. Like you can just experience it and like let the earth talk to you, right? Like let the spirit talk to you, like let the Buddha, like let the natural phenomena that is guiding you guide you, and like let that be the thing. Because I mean, sometimes it's like people find a lot of connection with just like being outside, you know, hugging a tree, being with your garden. Like that is by all means like fantastic. Like that's just as magical as attending a temple or something like that.
No, yeah, that's amazing. I love that because then it becomes a full embodied experience instead of something that then is again given to you from the outside. You know, if it's a lodge or an institution doffing you some degree because of you, you know, you spit out some kind of knowledge, which a lot of sophists and charlatans can do, you know, just the same way as somebody who actually goes through the actual work and feels the level of suffering that actually goes through that you have to go through to, even if it's reading and trying to understand these things and then participate in the world. Well,
it's like the humbleness, you know, like humble. You can always like tell like how humble is somebody about what they know, right? Are they like super trying to prove it to you? Are they asking for validation from you? Like, I feel like when people know their stuff, there's no need to prove it to anybody. There's no need to have validation because you feel content in what you have and what you do. And you already have a deeper connection to the more profound things of life. Like my connection to the stars, I love it, you know, and there's like, so I feel like there's like a level of young souls, we can call them, right? And it's always like funny because it's always like quote unquote the young souls. I always say they're the old souls is what I found, you know, because they're like, oh, I'm like an old soul, I've done, you know, but I'm like, I don't know, do you feel like you'd have to say that if you were an old, I feel like an old soul would be like super chill and just like hanging out, maybe smoke, you know, just like super chill, right? There wouldn't be a need to like be so integrated in this modern rat race of everything. So that's just my take.
Well, that's a great take, and it reminds me of the idea of like what we're trying to get at with this thing is that each individual out there has to, and we've had to go through it. I'm always going through it. It feels like every day. I'm sharpening my sword of my using the wand of intuition, sharpening my sword of reason. These two things are really important when you're walking around the everyday world. Fascinating enough, it's a great allegory. Not only your book, but then we watched a movie the other evening. Even if the movie wasn't that good, there was this idea of the glamour that he was wearing this bracelet charm, and this person was already dead. And so it's in Rest in Peace. It's like a comedy that was just a few years ago. Thank you. Rest in peace, department. And the idea is that the bad guy, which was the friend of the person, and he ended up killing him because they made bad moral choices, like we all seem to do at times. And then you trusted in somebody outside of yourself to make this choice together. And then that guy shoots you, stabs you in the back, whatever it is. And then, but come to find out that individual, spoiler alert, he was the bad guy. He was wearing, interesting enough, a St. Christopher charm around his wrist. and that was protecting him from being, because in this world the bad people are the deados. It's a stupid name, it's a comedy, it's a great idea, but these deados are humans who didn't leave after they died. They'd stayed on this planet, and they stayed on the earth instead of going through judgments because they didn't feel like they're going to be judged well or one thing or another. And so what ended up happening is that was the guy they were trying to find, but he was covering his stench or his grossness, this kind of zombie-like thing, by using this amulet. And in doing so, no one could see him until they realized it, took it off, and he ended up being the bad guy, right? And so it's just kind of reminds us of all why we need to try to understand the language, the signs, the symbols, how people present themselves, because it's not like people are always just going to be tattooing their sacred glyphs on their body. But it's also understanding what people are wearing and then how they present those things, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think a lot of it is like unseen, unnoticed. And I think that's oftentimes why that's like it's hard to spot all the time, but it's like it really is. You can see like energetically there's just something wrong here, right? Like the decisions they're making. But that's where it's crazy, because it's almost like they have this hypnotic effect, right? Where people are just like, yes. And then you try to show them the truth and they're just like, no, no, like there's just no. And so it is like a spell. And that's actually where I
Yeah.
wondered, like, I don't know. I kind of thought like Game of Thrones. I don't know. This is just I never watched Game of Thrones, but I was like, man, I feel like everybody who watched Game of Thrones just got like caught up in this crazy mindset. But that might just be like my weird observation of
Yeah, but what
that.
about it? Why you mean that everyone was caught up in some kind of depravity because of the kind of things the book and the story of Game of Thrones was
No,
about? Or
I just mean like I don't know. I mean, it was just actually my way of interpreting what was going on. Because there was like some sort of mental hold that happened around like 2018, 26. I mean, it could have just been the politics in general, but there was some sort of mental hold that like people that I used to know all of a sudden like shifted, right? And I know that's when that TV show came out. So that's for me where like I didn't
that's
watch TV or
hilarious.
anything. And I like came back into the world. Like I was out doing whatever I was doing. And then I feel like I came back into the world and I was like, what happened to everybody? Like, why, like, why is everybody so like in alignment with what the government says, and we should all be so concerned with politics all of a sudden? Like, I don't know, it just felt like something shifted, and that was just my way of interpreting it was Game of Thrones, but it probably wasn't. Maybe it was, but I just wonder if like TV and that kind of stuff has that sort of influence on the world, like especially like
Most
when they
definitely
have that
does.
much ability to become a really popular TV show. It does make you wonder, like, what are they inserting? Like even that Dune TV show, I liked it a lot, but I feel like there's some like programming happening. Like I always feel, yeah, it's just interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. And especially because everyone in that time frame was in such a vulnerable state of mind, let alone with the
Hmm.
whole Trump becoming president, this kind of level of, and when I think of Trump derangement syndrome, I think of it on both spectrums. And so I think
Hmm.
that's really important to get
Yep.
out there, that you can have derangement no matter what side of the line you're on, because
Hmm.
what happens is we create these figures and then we make them into demagogues and we put power into them, not them themselves, but the egregore of what you think this thing is. And then it can rule your life, which is then why it always goes back to making sure you have some kind of practice, understanding
Hmm.
these allegories and these symbols and these signs so you can see what you're doing. And it goes to the idea that you need to know what you're listening to, what you're watching,
Hmm.
because these things are then putting in small little subconscious hits into the nervous system. So then while you are watching the everyday politics, the everyday Game of Thrones, interesting enough that's a great that's a great like title. That's a great story exactly
Hmm.
for what's going on in our everyday life, where we're seeing these high level families to countries which are bigger understandings of the individuals of that place and the governments at that point. And as people are making alignments and then destroying them and betraying them, we
Hmm.
ourselves are individuals living through this kind of
Hmm.
information story warfare, right?
Hmm. Yep. Yeah. And that's, I think, where daily practice is like super essential. Like, how are we going to make it through? It's by saying shit, It's like the high priest always says, like, suffer what there is to suffer, enjoy what there is to enjoy. Both are factors of life. Like, we got to keep that in mind, and it is about I mean, everything in life is technically part of our karmic reality. We can't deny that. Like, it wouldn't be here if it wasn't part of our own karma. But what we can do through our practice is clear away, make new causes, make new choices, create new karma that helps to kind of clean our mirror. That's what we say in the Buddhist practice that I do, clean your mirror. And so we do have to look at it as like, yeah, these things are happening, but at the same time, like, are we meant to? Because like, even times like Buddhist times, like, are we meant to be so involved in politics? That's actually one of the types of people you are supposed to not interact with, right? And so it's kind of like we have to continuously know that every single little moment we have in life, we are making a choice, we are creating a cause, we are gathering karma. And so there's always this like mechanism of like, this is like we're free falling, right? Like I always think that like in life, you're kind of just free falling and you got to watch out what you grab for, because whatever you grab for, that's going to catch you for a moment and maybe it'll come with you. But there's just this idea that we always want to be fully aware of what we are interacting with, how we are interacting with people. Like if you really don't want somebody in your life or you don't want to have this situation, like just choose to like forgive and let go and let it be ended. That's kind of just something to think about. But yeah, the daily practice is super important for this time and age.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And what she's talking about and how I can interpret that for myself is that you're learning these two levels of the magical properties of the sword again and the wand. I'm going to continue to bring those things back up because I think a lot of times in our day and age that all of a sudden tarot cards and the Jungian archetypes and the stories, it's the integrating these principles into our everyday life instead of just yabbering on with theory. The practice part of it is honing your critical thinking and honing your your territorial ability to know how to cut away things that are holding you back. And I think that once you have a practice and once you have the ethos and the moral structures, the yama and niyama in your yogic practices, right? These things, then you hone your will and you hone your intuition to know how to cut things out, right? People, which is, friends that aren't serving you, family members. At the same time, the wand of intuition is there to know that you need compassion and to have forgiveness, because it's not even that you cut them out and you act a fool or dramatic like a lot of our politicians do with countries when they're trying to then create these different scenarios to build up pillars of evil or bad people, making people bad people. Thus, you victimize yourself to this. It's just knowing how to cut it off like a psychophysiologically, right? Not turning on the TV, not answering phone calls, putting yourself into a good mindset, that then it just becomes an embodied practice, right? And
because at the end of the day, everybody's making choices. So those politicians are also karmically having an experience, and we are witnessing it. And through witnessing it, we get to also decide making choices as far as like, that is something I definitely don't agree with, And so there is this level of like, everybody's just having an experience. And like, because we have all this technology, we're witnessing, but maybe we're actually not witnessing, like maybe we are actually, this whole thing is just so much part of our karmic reality and what we're here to really transcend and clear through and really keep us morally straight. This is the age of Mappo. It's like it's a dirty, dirty age. And so it is this age of like, there's just like the light of like is darker, it's not as bright, it's not as brilliant, but we are all here and we can all still, burn away that karmic shadow by just saying like those people who are making those choices, because we don't know what's really going on. What are we actually doing? Why are we here? So I just think it's interesting to just always remember that those people are making their choices. They have their own karma. Technically, I don't have to. Like, that's why this world is so tricky, this world that we live in, right? Because technically we kind of feel like we're out of control, right? I'm out of control because data centers are going up everywhere, right? Or I'm out of control because, people's villages are being burned and destroyed and, religious relics are being destroyed and all these things that are like, it's sad to see because these are lives that we're witnessing being destroyed. And I think that's part of like, for some reason, it's part of our karmic journey. And it's really, that's where having your daily practice. And that's all we can do is clear our own karma, like really work on our own personal life, because that's the only thing we ever have control of. And that's the one thing that we should make sure we do have control of, right? And that's where when people, want to say they don't have time for themselves or time for this, like you lay down to go to bed at night, right? That's like a minute maybe before you go to bed. Like you probably have a minute when you wake up. Like there's time throughout the day. It's just, do you want to do it or not? It's like the same thing if like you want to eat healthy. Well, I don't know, that's going to be so hard. I got to do all these things. And it's like, well, do you want to do it or not? That's really what it
Yeah.
comes down to. Mm-hmm.
No, I love that. And the idea of just taking, I think it's taking every moment to take a breath and to try to make sure that you are constructing the best moment for yourself. And I think that's not something you have to think about. I think you can feel it on that everyday time. I'd like actually for you to explain two things. What is the age of Mappo in Buddhism, just so if people don't know?
Well, so like, it's just it's just essentially like a time when when it's harder to see the light of the Buddha, essentially, I guess is
Right.
the easiest way to put it. But the Buddha is always here. So it's not like the Buddha is ever gone. It's just, if the Buddha was always around and we could always see the Buddha, we would take the Buddha for granted because we'd always have this access to this entity. But this is how expedient means works. Expedient means that the Buddha is always present. So every situation that happens to you specifically is meaning that the Buddha has created that situation. And when you're chanting, so like what the practice I do, we chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, you have the protection of the bodhisattvas with you. So there is this like level where you're not alone, right? And whether you want to call them spirits, whether you want to call them, teachers, however you want to look at it, essentially Mappo just means that it's harder. It's like people are just a little duller. Like their connection to the Buddha is just a little bit strained. Because the thing is that the devil of the sixth heaven, right? We talked about him before, will encourage people to curse. I know this is going to sound like kind of crazy religious or something like that, but will encourage people to curse like Buddhists, and therefore like they choose this bad or like even any religion, right? They attack people that are doing good for the world. We'll just say it's that. And then by choosing to attack people that are doing good for the world, they get worse karma. So like it just gets darker and darker. Maybe they have to be a beetle and then come back like a little tiny creature like a mosquito and all those sorts of things. So anyways, the age of Mappo is just like far removed from like the light of the Buddha, but that doesn't mean the Buddha's not here. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah, no, that does make sense. Something as
Okay.
well. So it's very similar to the ages of like the Kali Yuga and the Dwapara Yuga in Hindu eschatology and cosmology. And so I think it runs it's like a 10,000 year what is it? Degenerate era. It's a degenerate era in Buddhist eschatology, beginning 2,000 years after Shakyamuni Buddha's death. And so Shakyamuni Buddha was the Buddha that we all know as Siddhartha. Is that correct?
Shakyamuni Buddha is the one that preached the Lotus Sutra. I believe that is Siddhartha, but in my book, the Lotus Sutra, it just says Shakyamuni Buddha, and everything I've ever read is Shakyamuni Buddha. But it could be also Siddhartha.
Yeah. Yes, it is. They are both the same person. Siddhartha, historically founder of Buddhism in the 5th to 6th century BC. Gautama is his family name, while Shakyamuni translates to sage of the Shakyas, referring to his clan, interesting enough, which is because sage literally means, or Muni, or in the Shakya clan, or Shakya, referring to his royal background in the modern day Nepal, interesting enough. And he's recognized as the chief Buddha of the current age, who taught the middle way, which is really important because that's kind of what we're speaking about, is this middle way. And I think the middle way is the way of all ways, because of even in Buddhist symbolism, the Buddha tried out many paths until he came upon and stumbled upon his own path, which was the middle path, and sitting underneath the Bodhi tree and going through all his trials and tribulations. Interesting enough, you did find something interesting about the devil, about Mara, the devil-like character, interesting enough. And so can you remind me what we were talking about and how that relates to this devil's in plain sight? I think how it did was that the Mara, which is at the 5th or the 7th?
Well, so there's the devil of the sixth heaven
There
of
you
the
go.
world of desire.
Yeah.
And this is essentially like the king of the devils. And essentially it's the one that uses the fruits and the labors of other people to get what they want. So essentially like just using other people's hard work, the fruits of their labor, just using it for their own devices, using it for themselves. And so the interesting thing about like devils in Buddhism is they serve as a function that keeps people from seeking enlightenment. So the idea that like the devil is like a one character thing, or the devil is like creeping in the shadows, is such a wild concept. Like I have nothing against Christianity, and I didn't even know astrology was seen poor in the eyes of Christians. And I was helping this woman at a grocery store. I literally like took time. She asked about some greens. I love nutrition. So I took all this time and energy and was like, oh yeah, do. I told her I spent like 20 minutes in the produce section when I already told myself when I went into the grocery store, I'm in and out. So I gave her 20 minutes of my time and she's like, wow, you must be like a nutritionist or something. And then when I told her what I did, I was like, no, I do astrology and tarot. She like walked away as if I was like possessed. And I was like, how did you make that quantum leap? That I was just helping you. And so this idea that like astrology is the devil, tarot is the devil, the Freemasons are the devil, right? Like all these things, they're just like, that's the devil, that's the devil, that's the devil. And it's like, no, the devil is your greed. The devil is your hunger. The devil is all the things that you desire that you don't have control over, right? The devil is a function. It's a thing. It's something. And that's where karma is so interesting. We have to look at everything that's in our life and ask ourselves, could I give that up? Is that something I like can't let go of? Because if I can't let go of it, that technically means that that thing runs your life. Right. And so yeah, the it's like a function in Buddhism. So I think that's a different thing versus like the Christian version where they see it as it's an individual person or a thing. Instead, it's no, the devil tests everybody. Like even when you read tarot, right? It's like you get the devil card and it's like, okay, well, what did you just say you were never going to do? Like, what did you just overcome in your life that's now back on the table for you? Let's talk about that. Hmm.
Yeah, I like that. I have a few questions for you as well.
Hmm.
Twisted Bricks would love to shout out Twisted Bricks. Twisted Bricks, amazing work. Let's go over to Twisted Bricks' YouTube channel. Check out all his work, his videos, his movies. The man's a genius. He's a magician of his own kind. And next week we're going to bring him on to MagusintheMedia for a brilliant conversation and delve deep into storytelling. And basically, he's a modern day craftsman demiurge. This man is creating stories out of brilliance. And so, yeah, just head over there to Twisted Bricks. But he's asking, what are your thoughts on karma? And I think this is a widely confused idea.
Yeah, so karma is every single cause you make. So every cause has an effect. That's karma, essentially. So everything you do will have an effect that creates your karmic life. Now, there's two types of karma. There's immutable karma and mutable karma. Immutable karma is like you are missing an arm. You were born without an arm. You can't change that. There's certain things that you can't change because of karmic choices in the past, right? So things happen to you in your past life that now you don't get an arm, and this is something karmically that you have to deal with, how to live without an arm. And then there's mutable karma. Mutable karma is like what I say by when we clean our mirror. That is mutable karma. When we clean our mirror, when we clean our life, when we clean how the reflection in the world comes to us. Because the more that you clean your own spirit, the more that you clean your own life. And like I said, the way that I do that is because I'm a Buddhist. I have my Gohanzen and I chant for an hour in the morning and an hour in the evening because my intention is to create the good causes that will clear my karma and help me make better karma for my future. So setting myself up for better experiences in life, essentially. So that's essentially, in a nutshell, an easy way to look at karma is that every single little thing is karma. But how it shows up, it's not like that like cliche, oh, karma's gonna get you. It's like that is not, because there's a lot of factors in that. And that is one thing that only a Buddha can understand. And as like modern, as like, mortals, we're not necessarily fully capable of understanding how karma will show up. But if we look at our lives, we can see what choices what causes we made in the past. So if you look at your current life right now, everything in it is because of choices you've made in the past that have created causes and effects right now. So that's one thing in Buddhism. It's like, well, if you want to know what world you're living in, look at the life you have, right? And that's where it's like, it's tricky because karma doesn't have a good or bad moral compass. Karma doesn't have you deserve it or don't deserve it. Karma is you did something, therefore, right? So it's not necessarily and that's where like the Buddha's always preaching, right? Like the Buddha is never not here. We're always getting the life, because that's what expedient means is. Like if we are like, that's what sometimes when you look at like all these filthy rich humans, right? They're like filthy rich because perhaps in their past life they were so filthy poor, right? And so now they're given everything, but now they're super greedy. So they're actually not really cleared any karma, right? They're still attached to that money system. So that's where when we look at our lives and we can say like, well, how was I when I was younger? Right? Like, have I shaped that a little bit? Have I cleared some things? And that's where, if we continuously, our family is our closest karmic relationships. And I understand that there are familial situations that are quite horrible. As like an astrologer, I see it, I get it. And I know that it can be really hard to like clear through that sort of stuff, but our family is our closest karmic relationship at the end of the day. So there is something in that situation to acknowledge, at least. Acknowledge. You don't have to agree with it, you don't have to take it forward, but there's an acknowledgement of like, why did I deserve this? And then maybe just chanting through it, right? Just clearing the energy. And that's a nice thing about the practice I do is like, you can chant for like an hour and your entire energy shifts so much. And yeah, you just get to create new causes for a better life. So yeah. And I mean, you can do that with your own practice too.
Yeah, no, I think that's brilliant. I had so many different things come up when you were saying that. And I think one of them is then that when you understand that every step you take has meaning in it, I think karma almost can give you that kind of ideal of knowing that no matter where I move and every decision I make is going to create some kind of karmic connection, right? A karmic link, so to speak. Yeah. And then in doing so, you have the choice to be able to make that link, because it's almost like that's not about good and bad, right? It's not about good and evil choices when it comes to karma. It is almost like
it's like, do you want to have a bad future? You know what I mean? Like, that's why I look at people who do like really shitty things, and I'm like, honestly, it's like that's why when people like the filthy rich people, I'm like, they are the stupidest people probably in our world. Like they are like probably the lowest grade human that could exist, because they have this idea that they can hoard all this money and that they're somehow gonna get ahead of the game. I mean, I just am so shocked that these people are not intelligent, and that's why we chose that title for the thing, right? Because it's just like they are the uncivilized ones. They are not civil. We don't the people at the helm of our ship are the most uncivilized humans. And how do we as civil humans who like understand like morals and understand we want to have a good and healthy life, which is a good karmic choice, like how do we live in this world of uncivilized leaders who just they don't have they're so uncivil, they fight, they kill, they do all these things that it's like it's so uncivil for the time we live in, and it's so trashy, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and that goes back to the idea of what the occult mechanics of influence are. Occult meaning in this instance, like what are the hidden mechanics? And those hidden mechanics are this idea of the egregore. And that idea is that when we speak of and we listen to these people on these black boxes in front of us, that if the medium is the message, that medium is almost like a honing device. Our cell phones, these black mirrors, our computers that you're listening on right now, are honing devices into not just the individual who is a link to these powers and sources that you can't see, but you can feel and hear and you understand at all times. That is the egregore that is being created. And that is feeding this power that then is like a closed loop system that is going back into, and I think that's what Philip K. Dick means when he says things like the empire never ended, is because that egregore itself was never truly cut off from our socio-cultural spheres. And so, you know what I mean? And so what's really fascinating about that is how do you do that? How do you make how do you cut away an egregore? I guess this autonomous entity that this autonomous entity, which is greater than an idea. And
Well,
I think
it's the making good choices.
That's what I'm saying. And it's everything that Buddhism is trying to teach us, or when you are truly working with high magic or mysticism, why they lay a base ground for principles and ethics and moral structure is because then you can build a foundation on, which is why you want to work with the symbolic elements of your own nervous system and structure. Because until you have the capability to use the elements or the tools wisely, then you're not actually able to make a clear connection to that Buddha nature or the source or whatever this middle pathway is trying to connect you to. And that's being able to make good decisions. Until then, we are not but feeding these great egregoric demagogues that we're putting up in power. And we put them there, I think, with our attention and our awareness, correct?
Well, yeah, and also too, like I think there is an idea of like they want you to, or the devil essentially, which is like the function that it's like these people are functioning in our lives as the devil trying to get us to create bad causes, right? Because what happens? They freak out. They literally start a war that no world leader is regulating, and we're just all like witnessing it. And so they want us to get unbalanced. They want us to be swayed by the winds so that we can be thrown off our path, so that we don't remain sturdy and strong. And that's where like having a strong center is so important, because in the 10 factors, like it's your power, but then you have a relationship, right? And if you lose your center through that relationship, you're creating an entirely different situation for yourself than you just had, right? And I think that's how do we navigate that is like it's an interesting thing, but it's also like recognizing that they are serving a function of like we live in this really wild time, like and that's where like the devil of the sixth heaven of the world of desire, right? It's like the function is fundamental darkness, right? So they serve as this like fundamental darkness of what we don't want. And that's where like again, we go back to, they always make us think that it is like pertinent for our individual existence to witness. But is it?
Yes.
Is it?
You're saying like, do we actually have to witness this grand, this narrative and the theatrics that are going on in our geopolitics is like such a big, it's kind of quite nonsense.
Be ignorant. Yeah, and it's not to say be ignorant, but it's more so like do your practice, do your prayers. Through prayer and practice and being a better person, we get to change the world. But if we keep witnessing and adding to that egregore, which you're saying like energetically, that thing represents this, and we just keep adding to it, like how do we ever get to change it? Like it's interesting.
Yeah, no, yeah, you don't ever get to change it, and especially because if we're always creating like a dual, like without, and this is a big thing that is really hard to understand out there, and it's going to take a lot of time. But there's no such thing as a dualized relationship. Like there's not two substances separate from each other, and that's kind of what's happened in our postmodern world is that we forget that we are integrated with everything we do. I'm going to shout out to Black Pilgrimage by David Beth. It's a brilliant book, and he's really doing the work with trying to show that you are having an embodied experience, and everything around you is interacting in this pandemonic way, and that there are Peter Mark Adams talks about it a lot too in our conversation that I had with him and in all his work, is that there are things around us at all times. It's not just a cup that has no agency, as in it doesn't have its own relational experience with you, a brook that's a babbling brook, a river that flows. We're shutting them off a lot of times and not realizing that they are experiencing us just as we experience them. And that's a shift of perception, because then that makes it that you and the world are interacting together in this grand cosmic dance. And when it does so, you have the ability to not be separate from everything that is going on, but to be a direct light in all of this experience, right? That you can choose your own destiny, and at the same time, you are the one who's choosing your own demise. And I think that's really important, because that puts the ball in your court, instead of saying, I'm going to give all my power away to Orange Man up front, Orange Man bad, right? The Great Donald is so terrible, or the Great Donald is going to save us all. The same thing is like United States of America, the military industrial complex is both the savior of all nations because it creates democracies, or at the same time, it's like the worst thing for the world because of the patriarchy exposing its own phallic influences upon all things. This is a Hegelian dialectic, and it takes you and your agency out of it. And so it goes back to, we need to understand the signs and the symbols and the philosophies and the concepts, as well as, while we're doing that, you have to take time away to sit and chant and breathe and learn how to use the temple, which is the body, which is the ensouled variation of your conscious experience at this very time. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And if you think about it, like I've always personally thought of Aquarius is the ether. It's electricity because when we think of Aquarius, like it doesn't move because it's fixed, right? It's fixed air. So when I think of Aquarius, I think it's like the ether and like all these it's like there's so much information all over in this space, right? The space looks empty, but there's so much information. And our human biofields are so strong. And the stronger you make your core, the more your biofield has a bigger influence in the world. So if you think about it, doing prayer is not doing anything. And that's one thing I always think is interesting when people say, like, when people say that kind of stuff, like, oh, you should be out in the street protesting, you should be out in the street doing this. And it's like, what if I actually have like a greater influence in my biofield and the ability to actually extend that force into other people and touch other people in that way? Because if we can change the frequency in the Aquarius fields, like the fixed air field, we can actually make a bigger difference because air touches everything. So that's one thing about the quality of air is it is humanity. The air signs are all about humanity connecting. And so I think it does take a little bit, it probably wouldn't be as hard if we all just went back to center and started to really do the practice, have more devotion, and see that's not wasting time. That's what they want you to think. And that's what's tricky, right? Is like they want you to think that you should go get it, right? Go get it, go get the money, go get the things, and I get it. We got to survive. Like that is absolutely a thing. But also, you will be provided for if you are doing your practice. Like it's interesting how we think that we are so much this like autonomous little entity just like working through the world, when really we have so much support. We have so much support. How much money do you need this month? Okay, well, give yourself at least half an hour in the morning, half an hour in the evening to like do your practice, center yourself, and just say like, okay, like I need however much money by the end of the month to pay my bills, and you'll probably get it. Right? Like, but that doesn't mean it's just going to come to you. Like, you obviously have to make the causes to get the effect. But there's this idea that like things will work for you if you settle your force and your energy and you strengthen your biofield and you allow yourself to be a more radiant being. You'll attract more radiant things. Like, that's just like, right? Common sense in a way.
Yeah, and the idea, like you're hitting on that the biomagnetic frequency of the human nervous system. And so this isn't some woo-woo bullshit, raise your frequency and vibrate higher, and then you will be able to manifest the great secret. I think that goes back to calling out charlatans and gurus, this idea of that leads to the love and light mythos, that you don't have that the universe doesn't balance itself. And so if you're not understanding that, what you are then, what is the great sacrifice that you're giving to the universe to be able to become a higher divined creature? Because it takes sacrifice, and you don't know how that's going to come unless you're the one honing your willpower through these practices, and then being able to bring on and bear as much weight and suffering as you can. And that comes in various times in your life. Doesn't mean you have to seek out this suffering, but you have to understand that, just like when you're working out, or trying to become a better martial artist, when you're trying to become a better astrologer, or when you're trying to become better at gardening, this level of kung fu, this level of sacrifice you're giving is your value, your time, your attention, seeing your loved ones, or going to this other place, or giving up this thing that your gut, your stomach wants, the great sugar, right? This is in levels of addiction that you're going to have to give up. and it's addiction to the hedonic understanding of reality itself, because we have to have responsibility enough to know that the law of equivalent exchange, one must first give something in return before of something of equal value will be given, right? So
well, that's where like, in my Buddhist practice, essentially like the whole intention is like to become a vessel, right? To become a vessel for the Buddha, right? And so it's like that alone is like the greatest sacrifice. Like you could build a temple, you could give all the jewels and money in the world that you want to the temple as an offering and do all these things. But the one thing that matters the most is like, are you going to be the vessel though? Like, are you going to hold that energy? And I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I'm just saying like that's the idea that you want to get to, is to be like, no, this is like, I don't know, we're infinite, right? Like we're
yeah,
infinite souls. Like we're not going to end after this lifetime. And I mean,
right.
what is the sacrifice? I mean, this lifetime is so short, so long, all at the same time. Like, like what is considered a sacrifice, I guess, like for, yeah, I guess like,
That's
yeah.
yeah. I mean, that's a great question. And that goes back to exactly what I'm saying, is the sacrifice is even sacrificing your old life for the new life that you want.
Right.
And I think it's fascinating to think that, like, for instance, when people are trying to balance out their inner Venus archetype or different things, you may build a shrine or an altar to Venus, or a ceremonial magician will do a ritual to Venus and these things. And then, there's many different ways to see how that works. And I think a lot of times we get stuck in the egregore of myopia, of thinking that there is only one pathway, that these all things are happening at one time. No, it's like many different aspects of these things. Like for instance, you are you're reorganizing your own nervous system and mind to be able to change the way you walk in the world. So then this feminine figure, this Venusian figure, can walk into your life, because the old you wasn't able to manifest those things because of you weren't presenting yourself as somebody would to Venus, right? Or, so it's that psychological understanding, or you're actually worshiping and trying to like the actual goddess or daemon Venus, this essence of Venus, thus being able to bring that into your life. I think the one thing that we're not talking about is that you're going to manipulate another person to then come into your life by trying to act like a charismatic fool who then is manipulating the situation. What you are doing in these instances, and especially to trying to understand, like, how do we bring a better leader into our nation? Well, you first have to understand what it's like to be a good leader in your own household. Well, before you can even do it in your household, you have to understand in your own mind, in your own body, in this mind-body synergy. How do you become the great president, the great philosopher king, the great leader of your domain? Before then, and that's why Socrates and all the Platonic dialogues is trying to understand the grand essence of these forms. In doing so, he can then understand how to act in the world. And then upon acting that in the world, he will become that figure with the highest level of virtue. He'll be able to truly witness the grand forms. And I think that's something that that is missing in our obvious day and age, in all day and ages, because that's why these things are esoteric. That's why they're occulted. And that's why these mechanisms of influence are so important to call out and to understand, is because of the stars move. And as they move, these forces and energies upon the planet are moving with it, right? And upon doing it, and upon their interaction on us all, they also have their influences, just like people out in the world. Well, the better you understand the stars, like in astrology, the better you can then understand the life that you're living. Correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what's nice about astrology is you get a heads up. Like, heads up, it's going to be, there's going to be fires tomorrow. Make sure you don't walk down 21st Street. That's where it's going to happen. Right. So there's like, you can understand that the fire is happening. And so instead of like choosing to go directly to it, you witness it. I mean, it's still hard not to do it, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm an astrologer, and like I had a friend who was like, I love your videos because I find them so helpful for me. It helps me not arguing with my husband all the time. And I'm like, I wish I took my own advice. Like, I am such a fiery person that it's like I have that Uranus trine my ascendant, and I'm like, no, don't say anything. But then you tell me to talk, and then
I
I
do.
talk. So
Yes,
it's
I
like,
do.
so it's, astrology is good because if you do listen, take
Yeah.
your own advice or like listen to what the planets are doing, like you get to know how it affects you. And also it affects everybody a little bit differently depending on what kind of chart you have. Yeah. So yeah, astrology is great because you will have a heads up as far as like what to pay attention to. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's especially in this day and age where the idiom of, or the saying that, millionaires don't do astrology, billionaires do,
Hmm.
and up. And so if we go back to the idea that our planet is currently being overseen by an oligarchic parasitic class who can be integrated and realized as maybe the old bloodline families. These families
Hmm.
are integrated with the occulted history through time, and they are interconnected with a grander understanding of legacy and influence through time, because a lot of them have the actual mapped out histories of how we got to our place in this time, which is then why
Hmm.
it's so important to then be using these same things, because you are your own royal on this bloodline. And you just got to consider yourself, and this is the idea that I always have, is consider yourself as being like, I am the 16th in line from this side family, and it's time for me to take my rightful place in the world. And so it's like,
Hmm.
you are the royal bloodline. It's just you've been pushed off of the lane, the main map. And doing that, you can understand that middle path is that way to the divine, and sidestepping all of the influences, either great or bad. You're finding balance within detachment, right?
Hmm. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting because it's like I play with the idea that like these family, but they're so uncivilized. Like
Yeah.
there's no way we can consider these people carrying any sort of intelligence. Like they are so uncivil as humans. They are just trash. They are just super trashy. So I have a hard time, considering that but I also know that there were divine rulers in the past that were kicked off their thrones, right? And they're like that because there are these very uncivil, disgusting humans that want to have power. And that is the problem, is like these people just want to have power, therefore they will kick people off their thrones, and they'll try, I think this is what's interesting, is they will try to get a Stargate to work, but they will never understand how to get the Stargate to work because they will never vibrate at the frequency that they need that Stargate to work at. So they'll like, they will create an amulet or something where they'll have the hair of some innocent, and create like an amulet thing. I read like a book about that where like, you know, somebody wanted the essence of this woman. So they took her hair and made an amulet of it. But I mean, I guess you can get into a Stargate that way. I don't know. I've never really entered into a Stargate like that. But I think it's interesting that no matter how much wisdom you can keep in your books, it does not give you access. Like, I think there's like the higher code of divine access. You can't be uncivil, like you can't be an uncivil, disastrous person. And so that's where I think, I mean, ultimately, I look at it this way. At the end of the day, this life is long and short. It's short and long. I'm going to enjoy what there is to enjoy. I'm going to make really good causes, suffer what there is to suffer, I guess, too, because that's part of life. And I'm going to know that we are all making our own karmic lives happen. And if those people want to be uncivil, but yeah, with that idea of the 13 families, I like it. And I want to, go with it. But then at the same time, I'm like, if they actually had that much wisdom, why would they be so uncivil? Why would there be a need? Because there's no ancient text that says it's intelligent to try to control a populace, right? In most ancient text, it says how bad that is. Actually, no, it was a liberal art. Like in the liberal arts, like one of it was how to govern people. So like it is part of the ancient liberal arts. So we'll give them that. But like clearly, it's not working because people have dirty water, they have dirty food, they are dirty to each other. They are not creating civilization. So I have a hard time understanding how they can be considered carrying some sort of divine intelligence. I think they are quite ignorant and stupid.
No, I love that. I completely agree. Yeah, they are ignorant and stupid, and they are. And this is the idea, is that they're trying to, in my storybook mind of things that I hear and know, is that they're all fighting for divine rights as kings and queens. And so if that fight is still going on, it's like, who is actually has that divine right? And that goes back to the beginning of this talk and this great episode, is that what is this Game of Thrones that is being vied for? I think it is a symbolic understanding of trying to get at what it means for a fool like Jon Snow, who was the bastard of, somebody's somebody, and I've read it and I know it doesn't even matter. It's the idea that you are all somebody who's trying to rise into your own power. And I think the idea that if you are doing these practices, having a practice, understanding and truly having a dialogue with others, so that in that dialogue we can get, that's what Socrates is doing in the Platonic dialogues, is they're conversing back and forth, trying to understand what something is. So what is that? What is justice? What is fortitude? What is divine beauty? What is divine madness? What is courage? What does it mean to be pious? And as you're breaking this thing down, we can actually talk about, through our experiences, what to get to the essence of things, getting to the essence of the good, or that middle pathway. What is the Buddha? What does it mean to be the Buddha? And I think these things are really important, because as these happen, you're going to get into the grand dialectical argument of that. If you understand your idea as being better than others, instead of that is your pathway or the vehicle that you're creating. This is my temple, and upon it, we all know what it looks like when somebody is moving upon their great way, the great work. And if they're moving in a concordance with reality around them, that reality will begin to help push them along the way. And that's then on the inverted side of that. There is a way to hack the universe by doing terrible things and using these life forces, and to tap into that, because that is the counterbalance at all times. The great counterbalance of non-beingness, this great darkness that balances the great light as it forever spins and turns to create the cosmic drama, as we all try to awaken that inner Buddha. And I think that's a grand story, because then in doing so, I can understand true suffering. I can understand true despair. And when I do that, when I see great beauty, it awakens me in a way that I've never felt before. And upon doing that, then you can try to understand what it means to live a virtuous life and move forward in that life. And I find that to be such a beautiful thing, because there are devils in plain sight. And through these kind of conversations, we have the ability to see them. And first, you must see the devil in your own eyes that's moving on either side of your shoulder. And upon doing so, we can understand the hidden mechanics of influence, not only in my world, but in everyone else's. This is Kaiva Rose. This is beautiful. This is such a great journey. Kaiva Rose and I are going to be doing these great Monday night live streams, as well as probably many others, as we continue to roam forward in this ocean of chaos and beauty at the same time. Please tell the people where they can find you, what you're working on, what's going on in your life, and all that jazz.
Awesome. Okay, so you can find me at 11kaivarose33.com if you want to do a personal reading. I also post daily and weekly astrology videos on Instagram at Kaiva Rose, as well as YouTube and Facebook. I'm currently working on book 3 of Rue Odyssey. It's been on the back burner for a few years. So people that are waiting, it'll hopefully come out maybe in like a year and a half. So that's what I'm working on. And then, just studying a lot, just doing a lot of reading and studying astrology is what I do every day. So thank you all for joining us.
Yes, thank you all for joining us. Go read her books. Get an astrology reading. If you don't know your exact date, get a tarot reading, because this woman is brilliant. And in a world of the dumb, the deaf, and the blind, sometimes we need a little help upon our pathway. And it's the stars and the cards and the person that reads them who has the ability to, with honesty and authenticity, help us upon that path. It's hard to find. And so as well as that, I am going to be here, MagusintheMedia. And if you haven't, make sure to like, subscribe, and share to Kaiva Rose. And also like, subscribe, and share all of MagusintheMedia out there. David Beth is coming on, and his book, The Black Pilgrimage. We're going to be going deep. I've got the great Lon Milo Duquette coming on, and it's going to be amazing. I've been wanting to talk to the great Lon Milo Duquette for such a long time, and I would state, and I'm just so grateful for everything that that is going on with that, and the people that are helping me along this journey. Colin Conkright in his new book, The Universalism, I'm going to be having, and then Danielle Lane, and she's a professor out of Gonzaga in ancient philosophy. We're going to be talking ancient philosophy. We're going to be talking all philosophy. And like I said, Kaiva Rose is going to be coming on all the time because I wouldn't be able to do what I do without the beauty that's right next to me. Thank you, everybody out in the world, and we're going to see you